Welcome to the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. I'm Kevin C. Neese.
And I'm Tim Van Orden, and this is episode 4, Discovery and Religion. We'll be starting off with some Star Trek news and a little bit about Star Trek Day, and then discussing the latest episode of Lower Decks.
And then we'll get into our main topic, which is an introductory discussion of how religion is portrayed in Discovery. And after that, an audience question. It's all coming up. Stay with us. All right, well, here we are again. I now have, I'm back in the saddle with Tim Van Orden once more. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
I'm glad you're here. It's it was good to have David last week, but it's nice to be flying with my my real first officer here. It's good. So.
Oh.
All right, enough mushy stuff. How are you? How was your Star Trek day and your Star Trek week?
I have to admit, I've never really celebrated Star Trek Day on Star Trek Day because I didn't know it was a thing. I haven't written any books about Star Trek though, so it's a little understandable, or it's a little forgivable for me to not be on the ball there. But I did actually just the other day watch the first half of the Strange New Worlds panel from Star Trek Day. I got to see it on YouTube, and I keep seeing the one for DS9 on there too. It looks good. I want to watch that. But it was interesting to hear them talking about where they want to go with the series, and how like they want to kind of return to some of that episodal storytelling, where everything starts and is contained and ends in one episode. But They also want to take the modern overarching character development that we've become so accustomed to in our television these days, and they want to apply that to the series as a whole. So the characters will still grow and change, but there's not going to be as much in terms of like both of these first 2 seasons of Discovery have had such a season-long arc, right?
Yeah.
They're not looking to get into that so much, and it was really interesting to hear everybody talking about exploring that. But I think what kind of was most intriguing to me was Rebecca Romijn. I'm not saying her name right.
Rebecca Romijn,
like the lettuce. Got it.
Yeah.
She was she's pretty much like Pike and Spock both have established characters that they need to fit into within the canon. She's got like nothing, she's got one episode, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So she's got all this room to explore, and just this opportunity to see this who this character is really exciting to me. I'm looking forward to number 1 and learning if she has a name.
She does. We learned that. Yeah, we learned that in it may have been in Short Treks, I think.
Okay, I didn't see all of the Short Treks. I don't think there's 1 or 2 that I missed.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you her name?
Yeah. Yes, please.
So her name is Una, which means one.
Yeah.
So
it's like Uno.
Yeah.
It's a card game.
Una, not Uno. Una.
Well, she's Uno now.
She is the one and Una. But yeah, it's really interesting, and like the character number 1 is something that I'm interested in this thing. I'm gonna go ahead and say, well, do I say it now?
Why not?
I have a fan theory regarding number 1 that I've had for a number of years.
Maybe we can turn this section into news and theories.
Ooh, news and theories. News you can use to create wild theories.
Right.
But I will share that at a later date, perhaps when Strange New Worlds premieres or something like that.
All right. Looking forward to hearing about it.
We shall see. I'll keep it mysterious. Like number 1. Ooh. But speaking of Star Trek Day, yeah, that has also been mysterious to me. Well, it hasn't really been an official thing until this year.
Right.
This is the first time Viacom CBS has been behind it. And I was even talking last week about, I was completely stumped. Not completely stumped. Like I'd heard kind of vaguely that Star Trek Day existed or that was what people called the anniversary. But
Mhm.
I'm on the radio in the UK, and the lady's like, "So, what are you going to do for Star Trek Day?" And I'm like, "I don't know." So I get that. Yeah, I totally. And I'm there with you, and I don't think you're the only person who's like, Star Trek Day. What's that? Because I did write a book. Like you said, oh, I didn't write a book. I did, and I am being interviewed about the book on Star Trek Day for the 50th anniversary, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. So there you go.
Nice.
So you're in good company.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, okay, all right, agreed. But yeah, so my Star Trek Day was watching First Frontier. I talked about this last week. The fan film about Robert and Sarah April, really, and the first voyage of the Enterprise, and it was a pretty cool little thing. I enjoyed it, and I nerded out with a friend of mine who's also a huge Robert April fan, and we talked, and it was very cool. So I enjoyed that very much.
Very good.
In fact, I will. The film premiered on YouTube. I didn't have a YouTube link last week. I just had the Facebook page. So I'll put the YouTube link in the description this week. So
okay,
so people
good
can go watch it. It's only an hour and 20 minutes, so go check it out. It's cool. They spent 5 years making it. I mean, take the time. Go check it out. So yeah, what other Star Trek news do we have, Tim?
Okay, so this is not like heavy duty news. It's just something that I saw scrolling through the internet, and I was intrigued by it. So it's on trekmovie.com. Apparently, did you know that Robert Duncan McNeil and Garrett Wang have a podcast?
I did not know this.
It's called Delta Flyers.
Delta Flyers. Oh, that's a good name.
The Delta Flyers.
I like that.
So I'm definitely going to add that to my list of podcasts. I'll have to see if it's on Anchor.
Oh yeah.
The apparently though, according to this website, back in May, they reported that the two of them were serious about wanting to bring back their Captain Proton holodeck adventures. So, and this article is from a couple of weeks ago. Apparently, it came up again. The subject came up again when Robert Beltran, not Robert. Robert Beltran.
Yeah, Robert Beltran. Yeah, there are three Roberts in Voyager.
Was on the air talking about some stuff that he had done, and it kind of reminded McNeil about Captain Proton again, and he started talking about wanting to do it in black and white, and the fact or the nugget came up that Kurtzman was wanting to do some black and white for the Trek shorts. So McNeil was talking about wanting it to be in the short Treks thing, and I don't know. It seemed I was really intrigued with the idea. There's no like I said, there's no confirmation of it or anything like that. It's all just all the right people are saying they want to do something along this line. So I think it would be really neat to see the Voyager crew come back, like one or two per little episode, one episode. And even Mulgrew has said that she'd be game for reprising her role as that Spider Queen.
Oh yeah, of course she would. She'd do that in a second. Are you kidding me?
So awesome. Yeah, I saw that and I was tickled, and so I thought I'd bring it up the next time. It's a little old now, so most of our listeners probably are aware of it, but nonetheless, I wanted to bring it up because
we are here to spread the Star Trek news, whether people know it or whether we think people know it or not. I have to say, I would love to see that. I will tune in anytime just to watch Kate Mulgrew chew some scenery. I mean, that's fantastic. That'd be awesome. So,
but yeah, cool. It's on trekmovie.com. Maybe we can include a link in the description.
We will have a link in the description to that article. Absolutely.
Cool.
That'd be awesome. Cool.
So on that note, then it's time to talk about Lower Decks.
We're lowering the decks to talk
Wow.
about Lower Decks.
What was the name of this episode?
This episode was Captain Proton.
That does not sound right, sir.
It's not Captain Proton. What was the episode title? The episode title was Terminal Provocations is the name of the episode.
Okay, then. Episode 6, Terminal Provocations.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I get the title that much.
Unless, not terminal in the sense of final, but terminal in the sense of a communication terminal.
Well, but it is. I mean, it is because there's the terminal because of the conflict with Badgie, which turns terminal.
Oh, yeah.
And then the conflict with the weird thing that that the guy creates. I've forgotten the officer's name right now.
Fletcher?
But Fletcher, yeah, that Fletcher creates that turns terminal basically, because they have to kind of kill the thing that he makes, which is interesting. It's like these two stories that, on the one hand, seem to have nothing to do with each other, but they're both about this sort of like technology going awry and trying to kill us. So, you know,
all the while they're trying like, and there's the point that confused me, right? So they're arguing, the bridge crew and the alien ship. They're arguing over this wreckage, right?
Yeah,
it's been abandoned for 100 years, and
apparently
it's important to Starfleet. Why?
This is the core of every mission the Cerritos has. It in well, almost every mission, but yeah, just about every mission the Cerritos has. It sounds like this big, profound Starfleet mission, but it's actually kind of chasing the rabbits, you know, of Starfleet. It's the same type of thing, but really, the more you get into it, the more you realize this is a mission that nobody else wants to do. This is like a cast-off mission.
It's the lower decks of the upper decks.
Yes, exactly. Even yes, very good. Even the upper decks are the lower decks, if you will, of Starfleet. Yes, exactly. The Cerritos is like, is it like these are literally like, these are like the lowest decks in Starfleet, because this is a really bum assignment kind of ship. And that's the thing that like the captain is always so intense about everything, you know, and nailing everything and getting things right and being perfect, because honestly, probably nobody cares what the Cerritos does, unless they cause major damage to, you know, to a star system or something.
So I enjoyed it. I chuckled. I followed along. It was fun. I really liked the trying to pin the mistake on Q. I'm like, that's brilliant. I've got to start doing that. It was Q. He came along and messed me up and then disappeared. I swear.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. I will say though that, you know, that does bring to mind, because during that bit was part of the time when I was thinking, this is the first time since the first episode that I thought this, like, this is way too loud. Like, people are yelling too much. You know, it was really starting to grate on my ears at that point. I'm just like, well, people just, I mean, I appreciate that, but it's like, there's a degree to which, you know, there's this kind of freak out humor, you know, that Lower Decks does. And it's like, once you get to this certain pitch, you can't make it any more intense. And so everybody's just screaming, and it kind of gets on my nerves. So I will say that. But you know, a friend of mine pointed out that there was kind of this ongoing theme too of love and friendship, and love and friendship in the context of sacrifice. Sacrifice being like in his words, the truest form of love, and that what you give up for someone is the true measure of love, which I thought was, anyway,
yeah. Isn't there a Bible verse about someone giving up their own life is no greater love?
Yeah. Jesus said that. Jesus said that. He said, no one has greater love than that they would give up their life for their friends. So that's, you know, that's a little more extreme than the level of sacrifice that we see in this episode.
Right.
But
although,
you know,
I mean, I kind of felt like, was it Bradford? Cyborg guy.
Oh, no, that's Rutherford.
Rutherford. Okay, I still don't have all their names yet. I feel like he was prepared to give his life there at the end to let Green Girl get away.
Tendi. Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. And that's the other thing too. See, we've been talking in the last couple episodes about the Tendi Rutherford relationship. And last week with David, I was like, yeah, I see this week that they're really playing it as a friendship. But in that moment when Rutherford is protecting Tendi, he is clearly expressing romantic affection for her.
Oh, and there was definitely that awkward romantic moment when they started off in the training with the boots sticking together, which was awesome.
Yeah, that's such a sci-fi meet cute, it's great. I love it. Even though they're already friends, but still, it's that kind of situation where it's like, somebody drops their books or something and the other person bends down to pick them up. It's yeah. So that was pretty great. I like them. I think they're totally adorable. I have read commentary from people who like Tendi and Rutherford better than Boimler and Mariner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love both of them so much better than Mariner and Boimler.
Okay. Are you done with whatever paper you were doing in the background there?
No, that would be Penny.
And she is playing
Penny. With one of her toys.
Okay. So, all right.
Everyone, Penny is one of my cats.
Penny,
he's adorable. Yeah. So,
do you want to redo that section?
Nope.
Okay. All right.
Keeping it live, keeping it real.
You will go. That's the thing about doing this with you. You will go forward with a bad take, like you will own that just long before I will. But that's fine.
No, I know. I like the authenticity of it.
I appreciate that.
It feels, as someone who listens to podcasts, I really like that authenticity. It doesn't feel staged or faked or anything.
All right.
When you've got that level of authenticity.
Well, this is staged and faked, but we're covering really well. So
wait, that's not in the script.
Yes, it is. Shut up.
Oh, my bad.
So I see it. But yeah, no, I did enjoy this. Oh, my favorite thing about this episode is that the scavenger ship or whatever. Did you recognize the voice of the captain?
I did not.
J.G. Hertzler, Martok.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That was awesome.
That is good. That's cool.
I actually got to meet him a couple years ago. That was really cool.
What?
Yeah, I didn't tell you about that.
No,
yeah,
when I did, I wasn't listening.
I probably did. Yeah, but I did when I did Tricklanta.
Oh yeah.
JG was there, and that was really cool. That was actually the first thing. We were walking into the hotel, and like JG Hertzler is at the the desk, the front desk. I was like, well, we're in the right place because that's JG Hertzler sitting right over there.
And you recognized him without all the makeup?
Of course. Wow. JG Hertzler, are you kidding me? Well, he's got that magnificent beard. And
there was a little story on Reddit. Someone was sharing they were at, I don't know, maybe it was the Quarks Bar in Las Vegas or somewhere at a Trek convention or something, and he had sat down next to this guy and they started talking and just kind of having a nice conversation. And then when they were done, he stood up and bought everybody's drinks in the room right there. And that's when the guy realized it was, oh crud, and I'm completely blanking on his name, the guy that plays Gowron.
Oh, Gowron.
O'Malley?
No. Roberts. Oh, flip. I just said his name too.
Robert O'Reilly.
Gowron. Oh, see, you said Gowron, and I thought Garrick.
Oh,
so
okay.
I couldn't put it together.
Do
you want to do that last little
Nope.
bit? Oh my gosh, you're killing me.
I'm gonna break you of that asking habit because that's just more you've got to edit.
It takes up time. Robert O'Reilly.
Yeah.
Gowron himself. That is awesome. That is so cool.
It was a cool story. But anyway, back to Lower Decks.
But those eyes, come on. But still, yeah. So Lower Decks, yeah, it was very cool. I enjoyed it. I liked I loved Badgie until he turned murderous. That was a little scary. But yeah, Badgie was very interesting. I feel like we're gonna see more of Badgie.
You think?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I'm gonna see more of Badgie.
Well, reoccurring holodeck characters is a thing. So it
is.
And I did love the gag where they're like, yeah, the holodecks can be used for more than just talking to Shakespeare and
oh right.
Leonardo da Vinci, and
all the way up through Socrates. Oh, that was great. That was absolutely great. Yeah, Voyager's casting of John Rhys Davies as Leonardo da Vinci is one of the oddest choices I think I've seen in Star Trek in terms of casting. But anyway, but hey, we love seeing J.G. Hertzler on this episode. But
yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, so it's good. It's good. Anything else you want to say about this episode before we move on?
I kind of didn't like the turn that Fletcher took.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I guess I wanted him to be a cool friend, sort of a thing, and then it just turns out he's a kind of a, I don't know, what's our rating on this podcast? Can I say?
What?
I won't say it, but I was disappointed in his character. Let's say I realized they needed a patsy. The storyline called for a patsy to.
Yeah, I guess so.
Because they couldn't have one of their regulars, and I did like the solution where they got him promoted to get him off the ship.
Yeah,
that was clever.
That's a classic Mariner move, though. That's very.
Oh
much,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean she handled his promotion the same way she handled her own demotion. So promotion and demotion. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
But no, it was fine.
Yeah,
it was a good episode.
It was good. I liked it. I like it more talking about it than I did while I was watching it. At the time when I was watching it, I didn't connect with it as much. But the more I thought about it, the better I liked it. So, and I did catch myself just last week, and you probably heard me this week as we were setting up to record. I humming the Lower Decks theme. I was like walking through my day, just going da 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 da, and I'm like, wait, oh, I know the Lower Decks theme. Like, that's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, dude, we need to. I'm sorry, I was just reading an article here because something caught my eye.
Yeah?
We both need to turn in our Trekkie cards.
Why?
Who is in command of the USS Titan?
Well, at this point, are we to that point where Riker has the command of it?
We are indeed.
Okay, yeah. No, I knew that.
Oh, well then I need to turn in my Star Trek card.
I knew it was the Titan, and I just didn't know if he was in command of it or not at this point in history.
Well, if Den of I'm just kind of skimming this Den of Geek article, so I don't know for sure whether they're just speculating it's that time or not. But yeah, at some point Riker does get.
Yeah, he gets the Titan. It could be that time. Yeah, absolutely, that's true. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I mean, I knew it was the ship. I knew the Titan.
Oh, hey, there's I didn't realize. Oh, I don't know how interested you are in the novels side of Star Trek, but apparently in 2005 there was a series of novels called Star Trek Titan, chronicling Will and Deanna's adventures aboard the Titan.
Cool.
Yeah, I might have to look into that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sorry. Anyways, we've gotten way out into left field.
We've gotten into memory beta territory, sir.
Yeah. So speaking of love and friendship and sacrifice, and Bible quotes and such, that's a nice pseudo segue into today's discovery topic, right?
Sure, yeah. You can go back to something we discussed 10 minutes ago and drag it into the present and call that a transition. That's fine with me, sir.
This is Star Trek. There's temporal anomalies all over the place. A temporal anomaly.
We were talking about where to go with this. Yeah, we were talking about where to go with this episode. And, as we were talking, I just kind of started riffing on religion in Discovery. And just some of the attendant issues therewith, and I just thought that'd be a kind of a cool thing for us to discuss, because it is something that I was listening to again. I can't stop recommending Women at Warp apparently on this on this podcast, but I was listening to Women at Warp and they were talking. There's a really cool episode, their most recent episode. That's a bit of Star Trek news, something that I would pass on to everybody. It's not really Star Trek news, but the most recent episode of Women at Warp, they're talking about female religious leaders in Star Trek. And I hadn't really thought that there's kind of a rash of those. There's like a lot of female religious leaders. in Star Trek, and the discussion got really interesting because they just kind of veered off a little bit into just sort of religion in Star Trek in general. And it was really cool. This is a Roddenberry podcast, by the way, the Women at Warp. It's been around for quite a while, and it was really cool to hear them talking about the fact that like Star Trek is religious. You know, like the idea that there's no religion in Star Trek, and the idea that we don't talk about God in Star Trek, things like that, is really a myth. And that's like the first thing that that Christians particularly started talking about. Well, it was kind of the first headline, really, I think, about Discovery, those sort of like onset scuttlebutt news kind of stuff, is that Jason Isaacs had told a story early on about having invoked God's name in some way.
Yeah, I remember that. It was a for God's sake fire or something like that.
Right, exactly. It was something like that, and he was stopped, and it was the story like varied as to who stopped him and why, but the way he told it was, you know, oh, there's no God in Star Trek. We don't talk about God in Star Trek. These people don't believe in God. There is no God. That you can't say that.
Right.
And I almost wrote a blog post about that, where I went through and just poked a hole in that to talk about, you know, go ahead.
I feel like we talked about it in one of our audio commentaries at some point.
I don't know. I don't think we were just talking about Discovery in any of the audio commentaries. We might have mentioned it. I don't know. But I wanted to kind of go back and blow a hole in that and just say, no, actually, here are all the times that Star Trek talks about God. Here are all the times that similar. And what I really wanted to do, actually, because I have transcripts of all of the Star Trek episodes and all of the Star Trek movies, up to the end of Enterprise and the first 3 Kelvin Timeline films. So I have all of those, and I just went through and looked at every episode, every occurrence of the word God in all of Star Trek to show how many times it had been used, at least in that fashion, you know, to say, to use it in an exclamatory way.
Right.
And just to say that that's a thing. So that was talked about as just sort of a way that Discovery was, you know, like adamantly cutting God out of Star Trek. And I don't think that's what Discovery has done at all. I don't think they've avoided religion or avoided God at all. I think they've had a pretty consistent view of that, you know, with other Star Trek series, in terms of, but what gets me, you know, I'm not a big fan of Michael Burnham being related to Spock. All right, have you and I have talked about this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how you feel about it.
I you know, at first I thought it was just a gimmick to get people to watch, and maybe it was, but the second season really sold me on that relationship.
I like the relationship. I like the interaction between them. You know, when Sonequa and Ethan are playing brother and sister. You know, I like that. When we have them as kids, you know, their interaction is really sweet. I like that. It's cool. You know, dramatically, I like that. But you know, I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago that like, Michael's a strong enough character on her own. She doesn't need Spock to make her a legitimate character, to make her a legitimate part of Star Trek. She can be all on her own. She's strong enough all on her own. So you know, whatever the case may be for why we have this connection between Michael and Spock, I'm not sure. The thing about Michael that bothers me is that she is one of the most thoroughgoing naturalists in Star Trek. Like, she is like purely scientific to almost to a fault, I would say. And I think Pike starts kind of pointing that out in season 2. I feel like Pike is definitely represented as a person of some sort of faith, probably Christian. He drops kind of Christianese here and there.
Yeah, didn't he say his dad was a Methodist preacher or something?
Yeah, I believe he did. I believe, yeah, I believe you're right. Yeah. So we definitely see that in Pike's character, and he kind of pushes back on Michael a little bit. It's just interesting to me because I've always seen, and this is something they talked about in Women at Warp, this most recent episode, link in the description, um, is that I've always seen the Vulcans as a highly religious people. And they're kind of like, well, I think they're kind of religious, or they're almost religious. I think they're religious. I think they're absolutely religious. And they talked actually in the episode too about the fact that, religion doesn't have to include theism, and religion doesn't have to include the supernatural. There are all kinds of things that we do that are religious. And I talk about this in the book, in the first book, about human beings being called homo adorans. That is, that we are adorans, being worshipful, right? That we are worshipful beings, that we will find something or someone to worship, even if it's our own view of ourselves, right? And so I think that's intrinsic in us, and that's something that Star Trek can't escape because it's dealing with humanity. And religion was an important topic to Gene, and he put it into Star Trek from the beginning. And so it's always there, and I think it's always going to be there. And I think if it wasn't there, it wouldn't feel like Star Trek, in all honesty. But it just seems odd to me because the Vulcans are religious, and because, and I'm going a little bit in, I guess, into my own headcanon a little bit, but in one of the Star Trek novels, one of the major Star Trek novels in 1985 called what's it called? Spock's World. Spock's World is the name of it. Spock talks about the fact that the Vulcans know for a fact that God exists. It's not that they have faith, it's that they absolutely know.
Reasoned it out.
Yes, they've reasoned it out. They have some kind of experience. I don't know. But he said that doesn't solve for us these questions that people of faith ask all the time about, the purpose in the universe and things of that nature.
Yeah, even if you had absolute 100% irrefutable logical proof that God exists, it still doesn't answer the why.
Right. It doesn't. There are lots of whys and there are lots of hows that it doesn't answer. And I would say personally that we do have irrefutable proof of God's existence, and that is the existence and nature of the universe. And I think actually a lot of scientists are starting to veer in this direction as well. That the fact is that we cannot escape the order of the universe. The degree to which it's organized down to the smallest particle. Gene Roddenberry talked about this. This was one reason that Gene Roddenberry was a theist, because he said you can't look at this universe and say that it happened by accident. This didn't just occur one day. It's not just the question of why is there something rather than nothing. It's also, which is like this, the major philosophical question, I think, a metaphysical question anyway. But then also like, why is the something this something? And how in the world can we expect that a this something, this ordered, this organized, and not that everything runs like clockwork, but that the system even absorbs chaos into its order, into its organization. How can we expect that arrived by random chance? Random chance, which is an occurrence of the laws and the functioning of this very well ordered universe. So they're actually, it's becoming, the idea of people talk about intelligent design and they kind of conflate it with literal 6-day young earth creationists, where people say, okay, well, the Genesis account is exactly historical and God created the earth in 6 days, and they mess with dinosaurs and all kinds of stuff. And I live in Texas. We live in Texas, so we're not far from Glen Rose, where Carl Baugh has his creation evidence museum. So I mean, it's very strong in our in evangelical Christian culture, this idea that of creationism, and the idea of intelligent design has become conflated with that. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, evolution itself shows elements of design. It's a well-designed system. It's not just a lot of random mutations. So more and more scientists are starting to say, hey, our universe does appear to be designed. So all that to say that it's really hard for me then to believe in Michael Burnham. It was a long walk, but really hard for me to believe in Michael Burnham as somebody who is inculcated in Vulcan culture and history and tradition and knowledge. And even if you don't take Spock's world as canon, which of course it isn't, but even if you don't take that to heart, there's a spiritual nature to the Vulcans. Mm-hmm. There's an openness to the Vulcans to things outside of themselves, which they find to be a logical thing to do. But Michael's version of logic is colder and harder and more rigid, I think, than most Vulcans we see, and it's less mystical than any other Vulcans that we usually see. Mm-hmm. And is that overcompensation on her part, or what is that? Or is it that it just doesn't really fit and she shouldn't be such a thoroughgoing naturalist? I don't know. What do you think?
I'm wondering how much her actions at the Battle of Binary Stars shifted her. Because I feel like before that battle, we barely got to know her before that major life-altering event happens to her. Yeah. But I seem to recall her and Georgiou like teasing each other about having faith in each other, right?
Right, yeah.
And so I just wonder if maybe she was at some point, and then this her
changed
whole
her in some way.
Yeah, it hardened her.
That's possible. That's possible. I guess I don't know. Of course, having faith in another person is not the same thing as having faith in God.
No, but I mean, just in terms of the whole extreme logic that she goes to.
Well, and let's go further with this line you're bringing up here too, that I don't think there's not a separation between theism and faith. Like, I would say that Michael is definitely a person of faith. She's not a person of faith in God. She does not believe in God. She believes in science. Sure. She believes in observable realities, but she also believes, like I was talking about in a previous episode, she believes we can do better. Mm-hmm. That there's something that she doesn't want to give up on things. She wants to push until she gets it right, until she nails it. Mm-hmm. And no, I'm not going to accept half measures. I'm going to go all the way, not only because I believe that's the right thing to, not only because I believe that's the right thing to do, and that's the direction we should go in, but I believe that we are capable if we just keep pushing, we just keep striving for that goal. So I see her as a person of faith, for sure. I just see her as a person of very naturalistic faith, and that gets challenged. That gets pushed on in season 2 with Pike and the Red Angel.
Right.
So, it's kind of, this has kind of become the Michael Burnham show in terms of our discussion of Discovery and religion.
Well,
but hey,
that's fair. The show is about Michael Burnham. She's the lead.
It is. I mean, Discovery is the Michael Burnham show, but and that's fine. That's fine. I don't mind that Michael Burnham is such a focus. I think a lot of people complained about that. I do think that season 1 could have been more ensemble. We've talked about that a little bit. Mm-hmm. The more ensemble there is, though, and as season 2 progresses, we've seen more of that, the better I like it, because I think there should be more ensemble.
Well, sure. The relationships that a person has and how they treat the people around them is a huge part of what defines a person. Even if you want to make it the Michael Burnham show, you still need that ensemble there to explore her character.
Right. And we see more and more, I think, about that, but we also see more and more about the other characters' stories and journeys. And I like that as we get into season 2. And as we're talking about the religion aspect, that leads into Saru, and who has a whole arc, and we can talk about this in another episode, but a whole arc where his society's crux is this religion that is false. Mm-hmm. And
it's like someone pulled the curtain out from the guy in Oz,
right? Exactly.
Said, hey, look, guys.
Exactly. And the man behind the curtain in Saru's world is this weird, slimy, black ooze covered creature, which I don't understand. But but
how about that twist, though? What'd you think of the fact that Saru's species actually was the apex predator?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, and of course that's the kind of thing that Discovery does. Which is challenge your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy that and I appreciate it. But I also appreciate I think a lot of people will look at this and say, well, there's a lot of anti-religious or irreligious stuff, even though, like the Red Angel, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's that becomes this point of conversation between Pike, clearly more of a person of religious faith, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and Michael, clearly more of a person of like scientific or intuitive faith,
Mm-hmm.
but a thoroughgoing naturalist. And Pike's kind of pushing against her, saying, you know what, maybe there is more to existence. And I think even though it does end up being both her and her mom who are the Red Angel,
Mm-hmm.
and it does end up being technology instead of something supernatural, as frequently happens in Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of go back to what Ben Sisko says about the prophets in an early season. I think it's season one. It's season one of Deep Space Nine. I think it's in the episode "In the Hands of the Prophets," where he's talking with Jake, and Jake's like, "Well, they're not prophets; they're wormhole aliens." And he says, "Well, we may see them as wormhole aliens, but they exist outside of time, and they know stuff before it happens, and they're nonlinear. They seem like prophets to me." Like we may be able to explain it scientifically, but that doesn't mean that they don't meet the criteria for having that name.
Right.
And it's the same kind of thing here. I don't think that what we see in the way the events feed each other is anything short of providence. I don't think what we see in the way the Red Angel storyline comes about is anything less than a miracle, even if it's driven by technology or driven by her mother's drive and will and desire to to see her mission through, right?
Mm-hmm.
um, or her own drive and her own desire to see her mission through. No matter what natural causes we can say attribute to, it's like I was talking about earlier with evolution. Evolution exists, but that doesn't mean God doesn't, because evolution is an amazing system
Mm-hmm.
that could not happen by accident. So in this same sense, yes, we're talking about this technological thing. We're talking about this time travel and all this stuff that we can explain with this fancy supersuit. But the way that all worked together, I don't think that's not miraculous. I don't think that's not something that requires faith to participate in. So I think in a sense, they're both right, um, in that Michael is saying, well, this isn't something truly supernatural. This isn't something spiritual. This isn't an actual angel. But Pike's saying, yeah, but there's something greater. There's a greater dimension to our reality. We don't maybe always know what it is. We don't maybe always know what it looks like, but faith is part of who we are as human beings. And I think that's kind of balancing and rounding out Michael's character.
Indeed.
So,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So on that note, we're going to go to the questions.
Yeah.
The question. Okay. So I know you're usually transition Tim, but
I see.
On
I've
that
got
note,
one job on this ship.
On that note, we do have a question.
Oh, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Very good. Let's hear it.
It's amazing how those keep coming in. Well, it's not. I don't know. It's not something that I would necessarily say was posed to me as a question, right? But
Okay.
it's just something that someone was talking about that kind of echoes a question that I get a lot, and it's a question not so much asked to us as much as a question that this person is asking themselves, saying, "I've been wondering if I should be watching Star Trek because of the underlying, quote, anti-God sentiments." So I'm thinking about that, and I think that's how a lot of people react to Star Trek. And when we see storylines like we're talking about in Discovery, where you have very thoroughly naturalistic characters, or you have this sort of poking holes in various religions, alien religions, what have you, or images of God, you can get the sense that Star Trek is, as they say, atheistic in some way. And I think that's kind of part of the motivation that I have talked about in doing the Gospel according to Star Trek, is that Christians either reject Star Trek or they feel guilty for liking it. And I think this is kind of that feeling guilty for liking it side of things. Later on, this person goes on to say, well, they do all this stuff and all this cool things happen and things turn out well, but then they never acknowledge God. They're talking about their own achievement. And to that, I just want to say, first of all, I don't think Star Trek is anti-God or atheistic in itself. I think there are moments that could be called atheistic, but I think they're fewer and farther between than we give them credit for. Especially because there's a lot of, I talk about this in the book, there's a lot of iconoclasm in Star Trek, which is the tearing down of false gods, which from our perspective as Christians, that's part of many Christian traditions, is the tearing down of false gods, the saying that this vision of God is not the correct vision of God, and here's why. Or this person or this thing or this object that's being worshipped is not worthy of worship, and here's why. And that's a good thing, right? Because I don't know what's worse, no God or a false God.
Right.
So it's okay that Star Trek tears down false gods and false religions. I think that's a good thing, because I think we should be looking for false gods and false religions so that we don't end up following them. Because I think even as Christians, you just kind of think, oh, well, I'm a Christian or I'm following Jesus or whatever, and Jesus is true, therefore everything's fine. But Jesus is abused and manipulated so much by so many different religious people that a lot of people trying to follow Jesus get caught up in a lot of things that don't honor Jesus at all, that aren't true to what Christ came to teach or came to do, and that lead them, for lack of a better term, astray. And the Bible itself, Scripture itself, says to be on the lookout for these kinds of things. So I don't see that as a problem. And I do understand that in these stories, we don't have people like, oh, thanks be to God, or let's praise God for getting us out of this mess or whatever. I mean, they are, talking about, well, let's, thank Scotty.
Scotty, you're a miracle worker.
Exactly. Like even if Kirk tends to use religious language, like saying "bless you, Scotty," and things like that, even still, yeah, definitely. But the thing that I feel like I want to say to a lot of Christians who are struggling with how to engage with Star Trek is, Star Trek is not a Christian show, and so don't expect it to act like one. I think a lot of Christians in today's world, particularly in the United States, and I say this from my own personal experience, kind of grow up in a world where everything around them is Christian, and they only listen to Christian media and Christian music and what have you. And so you get used to certain things, right? Christian culture in the way we understand it is often very insular and kind of self-affirming. And so we get a lot more affirmations of God. We get a lot more affirmations of faith or whatever within that circle than we do outside that circle. And the challenge for a Christian who is from that context, engaging with a broader culture, is that no, you're not going to see those things. It's your job now to look for where God is at work in the broader culture, whether other people acknowledge it or not. To find things of value in something like Star Trek, whether the characters are overtly praising God or not. It's simply not the way things are structured. It's not the way it's never going to be that. There's never going to be a Christian Star Trek, and we're never on here. Well, I hope there's not. We're never on here saying that Star Trek is somehow Christian. That's not the point of what we're doing at all. The point of what we're doing is to take something that is not at all intended to be Christian, not that it's not occasionally or even strongly sometimes influenced by Christianity, but it's also influenced by Judaism and other things as well, other philosophies, other religions. But as Christians, we pick up on things that resonate with our worldview, and that's all that we're doing. And I think it's our job in the world in general to see the way things are, to see the world as it is, and see where God is at work in it. Just like I was talking about earlier about the nature of the universe. That's something that when a lot of people try to put a lot of numbers on, or a lot of story to the history of the universe, and it doesn't sound like 6 days of creation out of Genesis. A lot of Christians feel very threatened by that. But the truth of the matter is there has to be an incredible, creative, extraordinarily vast, extraordinarily powerful, incomprehensible God behind the crazy complexity of the universe, no matter how it's explained. And the ability to have conversations with that, and the ability to see that wherever it may be, I think is a fundamental part of how we engage other human beings, no matter who they are, to be able to see that God is at work everywhere. So yeah, I understand the struggle. I understand the feeling that like, oh, this isn't safe, because it's not constantly affirming of my faith.
Right. It's going to lead me astray.
Right. Exactly. To go back to that theme. But it's just like with a kid, I can, I didn't have this experience with my son because he took to bike riding so quickly and so easily. But a lot of people have to like help their kids learn to balance the bike and all that sort of stuff. And they have to hang on. And then eventually at some point they have to let go and let the kid pedal, let them ride the bike and maybe fall. But I feel like we often want our Christian culture to sort of hold the bike handles for us and help us to keep our balance. And we rely on that constant affirmation from Christian culture to be sort of the grounding of our faith. And our faith only really grows when we when we ourselves are keeping the bike balanced and doing the pedaling and figuring out how to actually live and work this faith out in a world that isn't constantly affirming. And so I would say take heart, don't look at everything to constantly affirm you the way maybe your comfortable Christian culture does. But look to be challenged and welcome that challenge. Invite that challenge.
If you haven't questioned your faith, it's not yours.
Exactly. Well said. Well said. And that's scary. I understand that for a lot of people. And maybe some people who might be asking this may have questioned their faith. I'm not saying they never have. But that's always something to do. That's always something to work on, to always be, it's like we said last week, how do you love your neighbor if you're unwilling to listen to their story? And part of listening to your neighbor's story is listening to whatever it is their story is, whether it's comfortable for you to hear or not. In fact, if it's uncomfortable, it's probably better, because the more you can see that your faith and that God's self is able to withstand, whatever, then the better off you'll be, and the better you'll understand that it's something worth believing in. Okay, so thanks very much for the questions. We really appreciate it. Tim, what do we have coming up next week?
Next week, we are going to be covering episode 7 of Lower Decks, and we'll be taking a deeper dive into this discovery and religion concept by exploring the episode New Eden.
Excellent. Sounds fantastic. It's like some genius somewhere planned it. So I hope you'll join us. In the meantime, please like, share, comment, subscribe, and rate. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to ring that bell. Also, be sure to send us your questions, Gospel According to Star Trek on Twitter or Facebook, and gospeltrekpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to discuss your question on the show. Tim, do you have anything else to say to the folks at home?
Yes. Apparently, Yoda has a last name.
What?
Yes. It was Lei-He-Hu.
Oh, that was worth it. That was just worth it. This is why I give you the mic at the end of every episode. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.
I'm Tim Van Orden.
And I'm Kevin Sinise. And as Jesus said in John 10:10, he really did live long and prosper.
See you next time.